When my team and I first started planning our coverage for GE 2025, our attention naturally went to the major parties, the PAP, WP, PSP, and so on. Then someone brought up, what about the independents? And I went, oh, right, the independents. So I texted a few friends who are more politically savvy than I am, and one of them replied, Ayah, independents don't need to care one lah. But on the very same day, I received an email from someone named Jeremy Tan. And that's when I thought, maybe we shouldn't count out the independents this time. Traditionally, the breakout stars from the general elections come from the big players, whether it's Jamus Lim from the WP, Nicole Seah back then from the NSP, Chi Hong Tat from the PAP, or Paul Tambaya from the SDP. But this GE, something truly unexpected happened. Two independent candidates with no party machinery or established political backing captured the public's imagination and injected a sense of excitement among the Gen Z and millennial electorate. Against all odds, these two men achieved a level of success previously unseen for independent candidates in decades. For decades, the path for independent candidates in Singapore has been, to put it mildly, an uphill battle. An independent, by definition, lacks the organizational muscle, financial backing, and brand recognition that even a smaller political party might possess, let alone the extensive machinery of bigger parties like the PAP and the WP. Their electoral journey is inherently more difficult, demanding significantly more public appeal to overcome the public inertia and party loyalty that Singaporean politics is mostly shaped by to this day. Within this firmly established system, we can see why independents have struggled to gain any real traction. Think back to GE 2015, when Samir Salim Neji garnered a mere 0.6% of the votes, or Han Hui Hui with just over 10%. In GE 2020, Chang Peng Wah managed only 2.78%. The last time we saw independent candidates make a dent was way back in 1972 and 1976, when Mr. Ng Teng Kien and Mr. Chiam See Tong garnered a respectable 41.87% and 31.8% of the votes. But in recent years, the independent label often feels like a political dead end. So, how exactly did Jeremy Tan and Darryl Lo manage to defy these overwhelming odds and steal the spotlight, securing vote shares not seen for independents in over 5 decades? Let's get into it. Reason number 1, the everything, everywhere, all at once media approach. Let's kick things off with their media strategy. While some established parties tend to meticulously curate their media appearances, Jeremy and Darryl adopted what I like to call the everything, everywhere, all at once strategy. They embraced every available platform, every interview opportunity, and every digital space. And this is what communication experts refer to as a deliberate pursuit of media saturation, where a message, brand, or campaign is repeatedly disseminated across as many media channels as possible within a specific time frame. And the goal is to dominate the audience's attention and increase recall, awareness, or influence by sheer volume and frequency of exposure. Think of the marketing campaign for the Barbie movie. You simply couldn't escape it. When we invited both candidates to our Primer with a Timer series during GE, Jeremy and Darryl gave us the easiest yeses. Both were super eager to come on, and actually, Jeremy was the first of all the candidates to schedule an interview with us, even though it was at the time still a new concept. To me, it really signals their priorities, and after our interviews, both of them went straight into other interviews and walkabouts as well. In today's fragmented media landscape, the electorate no longer gets information from only mainstream media, but instead from a multitude of sources, including alternative news sites, niche podcasts, TikTok, community forums, or even directly from politicians themselves through their social media platforms. Adopting the strategy of appearing everywhere can prove to be incredibly beneficial. It even worked for Donald Trump, where he and his campaign aides leveraged a similar no-holds-barred media run during his presidential campaign, saturating every channel to ensure that their message, however raw, reached the widest possible audience. Reason number 2, opposition positioning. Let's talk about their motivations and how they position themselves. Both Jeremy Tan and Darryl Lo stepped forward with a positioning of somewhat noble motivations, seeking to fill very real, perceived opposition voids in their respective constituencies. Their campaigns weren't driven by ego or opportunism, but by a conscious decision to address a real and growing gap in the political landscape. Jeremy Tan entered the race in Mountbatten to ensure that residents wouldn't face a walkover.
If I had not run as an independent, there will be 2 walkover states in places that I care and love deeply.
In an electoral system where uncontested wards are a reality and possibility, his candidacy guaranteed voters a choice, and this is a fundamental tenet of any functioning democracy. And as he puts it, he wasn't just running against the PAP, he was standing up for the principle that voters deserve a say. And this actually mirrors the reasoning that Ng Kok Song gave during his PE 2023 run as well. Over in Radin Mas, Darryl Lo took a different but equally strategic approach. His aim? To prevent the incumbent PAP candidate from coasting to a stronger mandate. And it worked. The PAP candidate's vote share dropped noticeably from 74.01% in 2020 to 69.17% in 2025. But Darryl didn't just chip away at the margin. He also carved out a real base, winning 23.52% of the vote and outpolling an arguably more established opposition party candidate in a three-cornered fight. In the field of media communications, we call this agenda setting and framing. Agenda setting is about shaping what people pay attention to. By stepping forward and talking about walkovers, complacency, and voter choice, Jeremy and Darryl made these the issues that mattered in their races. Framing, on the other hand, is about shaping how people interpret those issues. By presenting their candidacies as principled efforts to protect democratic participation and not vanity projects, they made the case that their presence was not just justified, but necessary. But of course, that alone isn't quite enough, which brings me to my next point. Reason number 3, credibility and resonance. Guys, I'm gonna be brutally honest. For independent and smaller opposition candidates in Singapore, the bar for credibility unfortunately often seems to be set rather low. Over the years, we've seen candidates from various parties or independent hopefuls become, for lack of a better word, memes, and not in a good way. Their campaigns, their rhetoric, or their mistakes overshadowed any substantive message they might have had. But Jeremy Tan and Darryl Lo were different. They weren't clowns, nor did they become fuel for internet jokes. Instead, they presented themselves as serious contenders. They came forward with well thought out plans, articulated their views rationally, and maintained a composed demeanor throughout their campaigns. We've all heard Jeremy Tan's catchy slogan, "Retired, not tired," and his policy proposals included fundamentally shifting HDB flats away from being retirement assets, championing a Singapore dollar-denominated Bitcoin ETF for savings protection, and enhancing town council operations with AI. His Bitcoin proposal was highly divisive and drew criticism, but hey, for what it's worth, it actually demonstrated an approach that was at least thought through, a notable departure from mere opposition for its own sake. On the other hand, Darryl's platform advocated for stricter penalties for drink driving, lowering the HDB eligibility age for singles to 21, and expanding financial assistance for low-income families. Both candidates have put thought into their proposals, suggesting solutions for problems they saw were plaguing Singapore. They didn't just oppose or criticize the government for the sake of it, but offered concrete research-backed ideas. Their approach consistently offered rational perspectives and constructive suggestions, moving beyond simply criticizing the government. This allowed their plans to strongly resonate with audiences, setting them apart from other political efforts that might have focused on issues less immediately pressing or that struggled to connect with what people cared about. Whether or not we agree with them is not the point here. The point is whether or not they feel credible enough. This perception of credibility was paramount. In an environment where voters are increasingly discerning, looking for substantive contributions over theatrical protests, Jeremy and Darryl offered precisely what was desired: a professional, earnest, and competent alternative. Reason number 4, freedom from party affiliation. Perhaps one of the most powerful yet understated advantages was their status as independents, which is free from the constraints of party affiliation. Even though the independent label can be seen to be more of a bane than a boon these days, thanks to the performances of independents in the last few elections. But this time, the political winds have shifted. In a political landscape often dominated by party lines and collective responsibility, both Jeremy and Darryl presented themselves as pragmatic problem solvers, free from the party whip. Think of it like the telecoms market in Singapore. For years, we had the big three, Singtel, StarHub, and M1, each with their own packages, their own rules, and their own legacy. Then, suddenly, along came Circles Live in 2016. It was a disruptor. It didn't carry the weight of legacy infrastructure or rigid bundles. It was agile, consumer-focused, and refreshingly straightforward. And that's what made it appealing. It was outside the system, and precisely because of that, it could offer something different. As independents, they had the autonomy to advocate for what they believed was right for their constituents, unfettered from any party platforms or internal politicking. And this freedom made them incredibly relatable. To voters tired of political theatre, of messaging filtered through layers of party interest, these two were offering something clear, direct, and personal. This taps directly into what we call source credibility in communication theory. The idea that a message is more persuasive when it comes from a source that is authentic, credible, and trustworthy. By shedding this baggage of a party affiliation, both Jeremy and Darryl gained precisely that. They weren't bound by narratives that voters may have already grown wary of. Think about the digital landscape today. It's complicated. Among younger voters, for example, it's often easier to express support for an individual rather than for a political party. Online, where it looks to be heavily opposition leaning on social media, supporting the ruling party might invite criticism. And on the flip side, some opposition parties come with their own historical baggage or controversy. And in that context, someone like an independent becomes a safer option to support, seen as credible, rational, and not beholden to any particular tribe. This neutrality becomes a strategic advantage. It allows voters to express dissatisfaction with the status quo or a desire for greater checks and balances without committing themselves to a party they might not fully align with. Reason number 5, an increasingly discerning electorate. Here's something fundamental about Singapore's electoral system that is often overlooked. Voting is compulsory. That means turnout is essentially guaranteed, and because of that, the real battleground isn't about getting people to show up. It's about who they vote for when they actually do. And that makes one group particularly crucial, the undecided middle, what we call the default voter. They are the ones who often vote based on how they're feeling about their daily lives, what they see on the ground, or whether anyone has truly earned their attention. They're not loyal to any camp, they're open, observant, and increasingly discerning. This election signaled a subtle but important shift. Voters are becoming more sophisticated. Today's electorate is asking tougher questions. They're seeking substance, accountability, and viable policy alternatives, not just symbolic opposition or noisy dissent. This shift is best explained by the elaboration likelihood model, a key theory in communication. It posits that people process persuasive messages through two routes: the peripheral route, which relies on surface level cues like charisma, slogans, or aesthetics, and the central route, which engages the audience in thoughtful, deliberate evaluation of content and arguments. And what we're seeing now is that more and more voters are shifting through the central route, especially among younger, better informed demographics. They are scrutinizing manifestos and comparing candidates, and this is where Jeremy Tan and Darryl Lo found their advantage. Both candidates offered specific, arguably sound proposals tailored to the needs of their respective constituencies. They weren't relying on party machinery or viral moments. They were engaging the electorate on the merits of their own ideas. Their success tells us something crucial, that Singaporeans, especially the default voters, can and will support independent candidates so long as they demonstrate seriousness, substance, and sincerity. This evolution in voter behavior is a signal of a broader shift towards a more thoughtful, engaged, and demanding political culture. And while the PAP remains dominant, it's clear that Singaporeans do have a small but growing appetite for choice, not for the sake of change alone, but for better representation and better ideas. So, where do we go from here? The performance of Jeremy Tan and Darryl Lo has reframed how we think about independents, not as fringe participants, but as viable contenders, especially in single member constituencies or SMCs. They offer a unique opening in Singapore's political structure. They lower the barrier to entry by removing the need to form a team, and in the absence of heavyweight opposition parties like the Workers' Party, a credible independent can emerge as the clearest alternative to the incumbent. SMCs could very well become the new battlegrounds for independent hopefuls and political outsiders, turning into test beds for fresh ideas and new political personas. The success of Jeremy and Darryl will likely embolden more high caliber individuals, those who may be hesitant to commit to a party but still deeply believe in public service, to seriously consider running. Because here's the truth: many Singaporeans, especially younger ones, don't want to be tied to the ideological or historical baggage that comes with traditional party politics. But that doesn't mean they don't want to make an impact. That said, not everyone is optimistic about the longevity of this independent wave. As Professor Tommy Cole pointedly said in our GE 2025 results analysis, there is no future for independence. You have to have a party.
There's no future. You have to have a party.
And he may be right, at least in part. Already, both Jeremy and Darryl have hinted at talks with existing parties. With potential boundary redraws before the next election, joining a party could become a tactical necessity. Jeremy has also said that he hasn't ruled out contesting again, and intends to keep using his platform to speak to Singaporeans. But even if they join parties down the line, their origin stories as independents will remain a core part of their political identities. So maybe this is the new model: not lifelong independence, but independent entry candidates. They build credibility and trust on their own terms before deciding if and when to align with a larger structure. Or who knows, maybe we'll see a new wave of micro parties form, collectives of independents who want structure without the legacy baggage. In any case, Jeremy and Darryl may have unintentionally cracked open a new lane, and now that it exists, others are likely to follow. Whether this all leads to electoral reforms or forces established parties to adapt their strategies, one thing is clear. The political game in Singapore is evolving, and the independents just showed us a new way to play. If you found this breakdown insightful, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who appreciates smart political strategy. And speaking of strategy, if you haven't already, check out our previous video essay episodes on why having Eileen Chong take up the NCMP seat helps the WP in the long run, and if it's really the end of the PSP as many have said. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.